My name is Julia. Welcome to Recovery Dharma in the Spokane Sangha. I'd like to begin our practice by offering a sentiment of metta, of loving kindness. And I have little cards here, and I'm going to display for you. These are little paintings that I've made over the years, and then I write sentiments on the back. This one reads, "May you enjoy small wonders. May you enjoy small wonders." In the Spokane Sangha, one of the things that we do that's rather unique is we take Buddhist concepts and we explore them for an entire month. And when you go on the Soul Center website page under our Recovery Dharma meeting schedule, you'll see what we are exploring for the month, for the year 2025. And this month in June, we are exploring the Noble Eightfold Path, actually for June and July. For the month of June, we are exploring the first four of the wisdom elements, guiding the noble way of waking up to the causes and conditions that create so much discomfort and malcontent in our lives. Traditionally, you may be aware of them as wise intention, wise understanding, wise action, and wise speech. I have reimagined the Noble Eightfold Path using language that resonates with me, ways of thinking about, for example, wise intention. When I think about cultivating virtuous intentions, what does that mean for me? When I think about having wise understanding, what comes up for me in really broadening that understanding? What can be helpful? What's a word that encourages me and nurtures my capacity to be understanding? When I think about engaging wise action, I've been thinking about, well, how does that come alive in me? What are my wise actions? In what ways is wisdom related to my actions? What happens when my actions are unskillful? Can I still extract wisdom from that experience? Likewise with wise speech. Holy moly, if that isn't an enormous concept, I don't know what is. And how can I add wisdom to my speech? And so I came up with these reimagined Noble Eightfold Path, and I begin with the word be, B-E. To be intentional, to have wise intentionality is to be curious. To have wise understanding is to be spacious. To cultivate wise action is to be real. To be real, to recognize for myself, I am going in this practice to make mistakes. Can I be real about that? And it's different than being honest, because sometimes in my practice of honesty, I can be judgmental toward myself. I'm being honest, but I'm also being dismissive. Being real is more about being equanimous. I'm just trying to be neutral. That happens. Now what do I do? And one of the most impeccable ways to put all of this into a living, breathing practice is in the manner in which I speak, the words that I choose to use, the capacity that I know I have, the timing that I am aware of. And all of that encourages me to be patient. So those are the words of the reimagined Noble Eightfold Path. Be curious, be spacious, be real, be patient. It's a lot already, it's a lot. So take a moment to breathe. because we're going to go deeper. And as we go deeper, I want to encourage a spirit of confidence. You have what you need to go deeper, even if you get uncomfortable. You are what you need. Not only do you have what you need, you are what you need. And let that be a little seed planted in a really tender part of the heart of compassion for yourself. I am what I need. I have what I need. And let's bring the Noble Eightfold Path into the context of recovery and relationship to habit energy. And I'd like specifically to bring this into the context of the stages of change. Change on the journey of recovery is a big deal because it requires that we change our relationship to various habits that have at one time served us well and they no longer do. And it could be any habit. It's not just a habit related to substances, alcohol or drugs. It's so much of our propensity to cultivate habits, routines, comforts, patterns. This is all very, very human. And so really what we're looking at is our relationship to attachment. And it's not about taking out a scalpel and trying to cut away those attachments and get rid of them altogether. And I think that's one way of doing it. But to sever something like that, to actually create an amputation is really severe and harsh and so often ineffective. So the spiritual practice is slow. It requires a lot of patience, a lot of time, a lot of concentration and contemplation. And so the stages of change are a psychological tool that you can keep in your mind. You can write them down. You can look them up. They're readily available and review them. But today I want to bring them forward as an invitation for self-compassion as we begin to explore change. Changes in ourselves, changes in others. There's something within the human condition that wants things to be different so long as nothing changes. This is called the sacred paradox, or sacred contradiction. And I like the word sacred because rather than treat it as something pathological, we can simply work to accept it, that this is part of being a weird human being. We all have this. We all want things to be different and aspects of me to be different so long as I don't have to change anything. Change is scary. That's the story I keep telling myself. And so how do we work with that? How do we work with the psychology of that? And the answer is gently and methodically. The first stage of change is called pre-contemplation. In the context of recovery, this is the stage where we've all been. We all know this place. This is a place where we might have a hint that our habit energy is causing some negative issues. Maybe somebody has confronted us. Maybe in the privacy of our own experience, we're not feeling so good. Maybe we're experiencing some unskillfulness and some regret. Maybe the body's a little bit sour and unwell. However, pre-contemplation, regardless of these little awarenesses that are popping up like small kernels of popcorn, like those first kernels trying to get our attention, we're not ready to do anything about it yet. This is like the need for change whispering on the door of our consciousness, but we are not going to open that door yet. And in fact, in the pre-contemplative state of change, this is the place where denial comes in. And rather than once again treating denial as something pathological, which it can be, I like to put denial in the context of grief. Because sometimes we deny our issues and our problems because we don't know what else to do. The habits that we formed, the patterns that we formed at one time worked to address pain and confusion and trauma. And now those patterns and those habits are less effective. And we don't know what else to do. So we cling and we deny that there's a problem. And we may not even have the tools to be able to look closely yet. And so of course we're going to be defensive. We're going to try to not admit to ourselves that there's stuff going on worth looking at. We don't want to. We may not be able to. And so that's what's happening in the pre-contemplative stage. And I think many of us have experienced it, and certainly we know people who have. The next stage of change is contemplation. This is where our patterns and our habits become a little less deniable. So this may be the stage where our habit energy is now becoming a little bit more disordered and pathological. And what I mean by that is when negative habit energy starts to inhibit a person from maintaining relationships, work, living independently, a basic adulting, that's when it becomes disordered. And it's really hard to deny. And so at this stage, a person may begin to contemplate, wow, I may need some help. I don't necessarily know what to do, but I'm starting to open the door. I hear the whispers at the door of my consciousness, and I'm opening up the door a crack. Or maybe there's a little peephole, and I'm looking through the peephole. The third stage of change is readiness. The bridge from contemplation to readiness can be precarious. And this is the stage and the in-between place sometimes where a person is no longer able to deny their habit energy, particularly the misuse of substances, because they've been arrested. And now they're in the court system, or they're in drug court, they're going to jail, they're being monitored by a a physician's health program or a nursing program. They're in some kind of monitoring program. There's no denying that anymore. And there's a forced readiness. There's also readiness that one is able to do on one's own terms. This is an individual who has a lot of support, who's encouraged. This is a place of readiness where options begin to be explored. Detox centers, maybe you look up websites, maybe you make a couple of anonymous phone calls, maybe you talk to some friends, maybe you attend a couple of peer support meetings and get some information. This is all gathering tools, gathering resources, getting ready. And this is a threshold place. Because the next step, the next stage is action. But readiness to action can take a long time. And so we cultivate a deep sense of patience and encouragement and nurturance. We are invited to cultivate compassion and kindness and care, especially if we're in a position where we're trying to support someone as they make that step through that threshold into action. And this is where a person is going to maybe go into treatment. Maybe they don't. Maybe they get involved in a person-centered therapy where they find a therapist. Maybe it's online. Maybe they find a sobriety app and they join various groups. There are sobriety apps. The one that I'm most familiar with is called New Form. And there's meetings listed there. There's podcasts. There's group activities. It's amazing. Maybe somebody gets together with a group of friends and they start a peer support meeting. There's so many actions now a person can take to begin that process of understanding one's relationship to habit energy. I will say that action, that stage, it is infinitely more successful if a person has support, community, and connection. One of the hallmarks of negative habit energy is isolation and self-protection, and that keeps people inactive for a long, long time. Connection helps us bring a spotlight to our unskillfulness, to our misconduct, and it encourages us to cultivate understanding, not with judgment, but with curiosity, awareness, and healing. The fifth stage of change is maintenance. Maintenance is a non-linear, winding, tumultuous, peaceful, crazy, wild, wonderful journey. It is up and down and in and out and all around. This is a place where we put our practice into practice, where we experiment, where we make mistakes, we fall down and we get up, when we take time to notice. This is the place where we cultivate big tools and we cultivate fine tools. This is the place where we recognize that what we are uncovering and what we are recovering is buried treasure, you and me, an infinite wellspring of divinity. And so we learn to become operators of heavy equipment, excavators and diggers. And we also learn how to hold a very fine brush for those more tender places in our inner landscapes. The sixth stage of change is actually a stage that is sprinkled throughout the 5 other stages, and it's called recurrence. And recurrences of habit energy are returns to maladaptive ways of coping, and they come in many forms. And this historically was a place of punitive reflection, usually, where people felt like they had to go back to the beginning. The contemporary view of recurrence, however, is an opportunity. And it is a place of pause to reflect on what drew me to return to this habit. And can I look at this? Can I contemplate this recurrence with some degree of equanimity, meaning I sought some benefit by returning to this habit energy. Did I get some? And the answer might be yes. And that's worth exploring. Because mixed in there as well, the answer is also probably no. I didn't get the benefit that I was seeking. What can I learn from that? How can I weigh the pros and cons of my own actions? And can I do that weighing without punishment or judgment? Can I use that action as an opportunity to practice equanimity? Taking a step back, learning, giving it some space to really explore it in order to develop and deepen my own understanding, which will then inform and reinforce my wise intentions. And maybe that reinforcement will direct my actions towards something more virtuous and aligned with my greatest aspirations, which is to change my relationship to habit energy. And maybe through all of these stages, especially the tender stage of recurrence, maybe I can employ speech toward myself. And maybe that speech can be a voice of patience, encouragement, nurturance, maturity, and maybe then I'll tap into my inherent wisdom. The Noble Eightfold Path, traditionally and reimagined, as it applies to the stages of change, something human beings resist, which causes conditions of suffering. May these elements of the Noble Eightfold Path guide you and support you as they have guided me and supported me. And may your exploration be one of wonder and beauty. And may you know that every effort you take is of benefit to all. Alrighty, that's enough. Let's end this beautiful practice with a dedication of merit. Just take a moment and be with yourself exactly as you are. Come home. And then allow yourself a moment to wonder, is my body temple, is my mind temple, is my heart temple a place of home? Is it nurturing? Is it comforting? Or is it a landscape that has been neglected or has been primed with harshness and neglect? And if so, recognize that you have the power to change that. In fact, the only thing that is going to change that is you. And these practices and this participation is a step into that threshold, over that threshold into change. These are practices to bring softening to those hard places in the heart-mind. These are practices that bring openness to the restriction of the heart-mind. These are practices that bring nurturance to a neglected heart-mind. May you take that in for yourself, and may you allow its extension to radiate beyond you for the benefit and healing of all. Thank you for your beautiful practice. We'll see you again soon. Namaste.